Welcome, everybody, to the first TEDx event ever to happen at the University of New Haven. This TEDx event is an independently organized TEDx event, licensed by the TED organization. Since being licensed, we have spent many months to make this event happen. My name is Alice Yee. I am a third-year undergraduate student at the University of New Haven. And the reason why I wanted to create a TEDx chapter here was because I know that there are voices within this campus, but there wasn't a platform for them to share them on. And so today, we hold our TEDxUNewHaven event with the theme being, looking at tomorrow from today. When we look at tomorrow from today, we try to think of a better way to go about things, a better solution, or a way to improve what we currently have using the resources accessible to us. And today, our 6 speakers will be investigating different ways that we can think of our future and make it better for starting today. So this event would have never been possible without the perseverant and dedicated help from the TEDx Club e-board and the members, as well as our sponsors, New Vision International Ministries, Canopy, and the University of New Haven. Thank you so much for joining us on this Saturday morning, and we hope that you enjoy watching this as much as we have putting this historic event together. And now a word from our faculty advisor, Dr. Tran.
Thank you, Alice, and thank you everybody for being here today and tuning in with us on this special occasion. I'm Dr. Alvin Tran. I'm an assistant professor of public health at the University of New Haven. I just wanted to start off by thanking Alice Yee and her executive board and all the people who are participating today on this event. It's very exciting. They made what I thought was the impossible possible, because they worked diligently and persistently during a global pandemic to put this event together. So this event would not be possible without them. So thank you for all of your hard work, and I'm very excited to see the 6 incredible speakers joining us today. I'm very excited to see the messages that you will leave us with. That said, I also want to thank the people who are at home today. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a great and wonderful time. So with that said, I do want to talk about our event and some of the details that will be important for us to keep in mind. Thinking about our agenda, which you will find at the top of your screen. There are 6 TEDx speakers today. Following each speaker, there should be a Q&A, live Q&A session for you at home to type in your questions. We actually want you to ask your questions. So please, think about them as you're listening in. Any questions that pop up, let us know, and there will be an opportunity for our speakers to respond. There will also be a networking session later on during this event. We will divide all the attendees into breakout sessions for you to get to know each other a lot better. And finally, we're going to conclude with a mindfulness session to make sure that everybody walks away from this event on a more relaxed tone. So again, thank you all for being here. And now I would like for us to all watch a video clip, an introductory clip from the TEDx organization. Thank you.
From Kenya to Colombia, from Iraq to Korea, in slums, in schools, in prisons, and in theaters, every day people gather at TEDx events around the world to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. Today, you are part of a global conversation about our shared future. So what is this TEDx? TEDx is an initiative of the TED Conference, a nonprofit devoted to ideas worth spreading. We grant free licenses to allow TED-like events to spread globally. This event today is based on the TED Conference format and ideals, but is independently organized by your local community. So please make sure to thank the team of volunteers who worked so hard on today's event. It's their ideas, dedication, and time that made it all possible. It's they who booked all the speakers, and the views you'll hear today are, of course, those of those speakers, not necessarily of TEDs. But we hope their talks spark an exciting conversation among you. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for openness and for critical thinking. for inspiration, and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you'll take out. And now, on with the show.
For our first TEDx speaker, we have Dr. Nanda Balan, President and CEO of Inveni AI LLC, who is also our keynote speaker. Dr. Nanda Balan has had years of experience being a leader in the world of biotechnology, especially in areas of big data analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, while spearheading many collaborations with industry players such as Pfizer, Biogen, and Daiichi Sankyo, among many others. We are excited to share his talk with you today, and we hope you have some questions to ask him during the live Q&A session following his talk.
Hello everybody, my name is Nanda Balan and I'm a scientist and drug discoverer by profession. I'm here to discuss with you today the status of innovation, how it impacts our future, and especially the status of innovation in healthcare, how it is impacting healthcare. What is innovation anyway? Merriam-Webster defines innovation as something new or something new added or changed to something that already exists. Do you have to be an inventor to be an innovator? No. Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, but we all carry around the smartphone, which is Steve Jobs' innovation. So innovation can be incremental, but yet have a disproportionate impact on our lives. What is the status of innovation today? And what is the future of innovation today, especially when you think of it in terms of healthcare? I would argue that it has never been brighter. And the reason is that there is democratic access to two of the key ingredients needed for innovation: information and technology. The third, even more important ingredient is human ingenuity and creativity. In the bygone era, you had to be a king or an emperor to actually send off messengers or crews to actually attain in the quest for knowledge and riches. But today, you can access information through the internet and also access technology very economically and very easily, like cloud computing, for example. Okay, so how does AI come into it, or how does artificial intelligence come into it? You can think of artificial intelligence as a catalyst for innovation, as a transforming agent, as a multiplier effect. And before we go further into how it impacts innovation, let me get some definitions out of the way. Artificial intelligence broadly can be defined as teaching computers to do what human beings do routinely or repeatedly. And you want to teach computers to do this efficiently, accurately, and economically. A great example in healthcare is the use of artificial intelligence in diagnosis, using inputs such as radiology or mammograms to detect tumors, for example. The terms such as machine learning and deep learning are also used interchangeably with AI. Machine learning is that field of study where you actually teach computers to learn without specifically programming them to do so. And deep learning is a subset of machine learning where you're actually teaching the machines to learn the way human brains do using artificial neural networks. Why is this important? Because you're getting access to data at such a fast rate that computers need to be able to handle this data on their own. And combining all of this with statistical principles and data analytics leads to the application of data science that is now crucial for advancing innovation in any field. Right, so what do you expect from technologies like artificial intelligence? what is the impact that is desired? Well, you want innovations at a faster rate and cheaper than before. A great example of this is cost of computing. The cost of computing goes down every year compared to the previous year, and the capacity of the chips increases every year compared to the previous years, right? So that's what you want. So, in healthcare, I'm going to actually come to two very specific examples, wherein I will argue for the case that artificial intelligence and allied technologies like DNA sequencing have indeed resulted in innovations that have changed our life. Here's the first example. In 2019 December, the world came to know of SARS-CoV-2 virus. This was a new coronavirus that was much more deadlier than the influenza virus and almost 10 times as fatal as that. Within a month, scientists had already sequenced the entire viral genome and had studied the biological nature of the infection. So even though we do not know exactly all the aspects of the disease, COVID-19, we knew how the virus infected us by January of 2020. At that time, I remember very clearly that the conventional wisdom was it would take at least 2 years to develop a vaccine and therapeutic agents to control the virus. So this was a quandary facing humanity, that with such a deadly virus, are we going to see the same level of fatality that existed, for example, in the Spanish flu? What people didn't realize was that we already had technologies ready to tackle this, namely synthetic mRNA. So you can synthesize any piece of DNA or messenger RNA you want and express any protein you want. And by doing so, scientists across the globe were able to actually simulate viral infection without having the virus infect, and were quickly able to come up with a vaccine strategy that by the summer of 2020 was already in human trials. And by December of 2020, 3 vaccines had already been approved. So what did they tell you? You should not be a slave to conventional wisdom. What was known before was because of the circumstances of our past knowledge, but human ingenuity combined with technology and information, in this case, our experience in using technology like synthetic RNA and the DNA sequence available of the viral genome, and also the raging pandemic itself was ironically an accelerator here, because you had access to so many people getting infected that you didn't have to wait too long to assess the efficacy of the vaccine. So that was a very good example of innovation using existing technology and information to solve a problem. The second example is a little more personal to me as a drug discoverer. If you look at the rate of innovation in the discovery of new drugs and the development of new drugs, it is antithetical to innovation in, say, computing or even an allied field like DNA sequencing. The very first draft of the human genome released in year 2000 cost a few $100 million and took several years. But after that, the rate at which we have developed sequencing technology has advanced so fast that it's actually faster than even computing capability. And today, if you want, you can get your entire genome sequenced in a few days for a couple of $1,000 if you so desire. Okay? So, why is drug discovery so inefficient? Why is it not progressing as other fields? Well, it's actually a very complex process. You start with a hypothesis. You want to, say, solve a particular disease, diabetes or cancer or anything else. And depending on the hypothesis, you start screening tens of thousands of potential candidate drugs. In the lab, you test your hypothesis. A few of them will succeed. Then you have to prove them in the relevant animal models. Then you're left with literally a handful of drugs that first has to be tested in healthy volunteers, human volunteers, of course, to show the safety. And then you got to go to a slightly larger patient population to prove the efficacy of that drug. And finally, into a much larger trial so that you know that when the drug is introduced into the larger population, it is going to behave exactly the way you're predicting it. Because, do no harm. That's the first rule. And which is why it takes anywhere between 8 to 10 years and $800 million to $1 billion to develop the drug, right? So when we actually, I'm referring to the organization I work for, we actually faced this problem in 2015. We were helping other companies and agencies trying to identify the best drugs that could work. And we started off with the hypothesis that why cannot we use existing human clinical trial data as well as the millions of publications that are accessible to us now through the internet, through PubMed and so on, and match the known safe drugs the way they work. They may not have succeeded in clinical trials, but you know how they work in the body, and then match them to the desired biological effect you're seeking in a disease. This could not have been done without the advent of AI. To do this manually, even if you had an army of 10,000 scientists, it's mind-numbing, and you can't actually think about doing this. So we started this, and in a matter of just 12 weeks, we arrived at a hypothesis wherein we could reposition an existing drug. This drug was used as a pre-anesthetic sedative to calm patients down before they went under the knife in the operation theater. And we said we can actually use this based on what is known about the drug to calm patients down who are agitated, who have neuropsychiatric conditions. Not only that, this drug, which was already approved, was given as an intravenous infusion or an injection. We actually created a sublingual formulation, so you can actually put it underneath your tongue. And thereby, patient compliance is easier. The caregivers who are taking care of the patients, their job is made easier, so you're having a real impact on the patients. So in 4 years, and in a total budget of just over $100 million, we were able to get to the stage where we could apply for FDA approval. So what did that tell you? Again, if we had thought of developing a drug by designing it from the scratch and not used all of the data available to us, we would never have reached this far. Not only that, since when we started with a budget of just over a couple of $100,000, nowhere in the millions. And we were able to generate enough data to attract investor funds as well as take the company public. So what does that tell you here? I want to leave you with three messages. First is be bold with your imagination, but also be bold to test your imagination. It's not enough just to think outside the box, but you got to get outside the box and actually do the stuff that you need to do. Second, think of technologies like AI as multipliers, right? They are there to be used by you in a manner that probably no one had ever thought of before. But finally, the real key ingredient is human ingenuity and creativity. That is what drives innovation. And as long as we encourage human ingenuity and creativity, the future of innovation is very bright. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Coviello. I'm a part of the e-board at the TEDxUNewHaven Club. I am currently an undergraduate student studying psychology with a concentration in forensics, and this is
Joey Edmonds. I am also on the e-board for the TEDxUNewHaven Club. I am an undergraduate, and I am studying genetics and biotechnology, and we will be doing a Q&A with the speakers this evening. The first speaker we have is Dr. Nandabalan. Now, Dr. Nandabalan, we have a couple questions. Do you think that certain areas of technological innovation benefited from the pandemic?
Yes, it did. Especially,
research in infectious diseases, ironically has got a boost, a shot in the arm. If you actually hark back to the 90s, most pharmaceutical companies were moving away from research in infectious diseases. What this whole pandemic has taught us that that was not a very wise move. But also, I think the entire field of vaccinology and epidemiology, understanding how diseases spread and how they can be controlled, and essentially understanding that this is a public health problem. It's not just technology or a drug or a vaccine. You got to apply this to public health. I mean, without understanding what drives public health, none of this is really that useful. So all of that has come together. We are still learning. We have a third wave now, probably, of the pandemic. But compared to the third wave in the Spanish flu, far fewer people are dying than the third wave. And that's because of all the lessons that we have learned as a society in how to deal with this. So in a way, while it's frustrating that we have to deal with the third wave, we should also be optimistic in understanding how we have used technology to overcome our hurdles.
Now, to follow that up, to what degree should limitations be placed on innovators by the government?
This is a very interesting question. When I was a graduate student, even before that, recombinant DNA was an emerging field. And this United States, especially the NIH, was very proactive and forward-thinking in putting together a recombinant DNA advisory committee, really understanding what are the limits to which you can innovate with this type of very powerful technology. I would say that the equivalent today is gene editing and the ability to change the properties of individual genes. Just because you can shouldn't mean you should, right? Similarly, artificial intelligence, right? I mean, while the technology itself hasn't progressed so far that it can achieve singularity on its own, for those of you who are old enough as I am, you remember the movie, 2001: Space Odyssey and HAL. So you have to still be proactive in understanding what are the societal implications of technology. But at the same time, allow innovators to actually work within those boundaries. So it's a matter of communication more than anything else. Otherwise, you're going to frustrate people and not. And always, innovation precedes regulation. I mean, you can see the big debate in social media about social media and whether you should regulate companies like Google and Facebook. This question was not being asked when Facebook was formed, right? But we can learn from our past and say, okay, there has to be some boundaries, some constraints, so that society as such doesn't get harmed.
You talked quite a bit about artificial intelligence. Now, it's quite easy to say like what the current state of the field is to some extent, but where do you see it in 10 years from now?
Oh, I think, I can't think of 10 years. I mean, I can tell you what's going to happen even in 2 years, right? So in healthcare, you're going to see a lot of the diagnosis being taken over by AI, simply because you can have greater reproducibility and greater accuracy, and you can actually disseminate this level of competence to areas where you won't have experienced doctors or technicians, right? So that's the beauty of having something like AI. Even in other fields, facial recognition, just dealing with the huge amounts of data that needs to be crunched through to actually arrive at a signal, whether that signal is, identifying whether someone is interfering with their electoral process, or are you seeing the emergence of a new virus or a new, disease, or in my field, you tend to actually spend years searching through chemical space or even biological space to identify the right target and the right drug, you're going to see this whole process being compressed due to artificial intelligence, so that what takes so long now will take 1/10 of that time.
So lastly, to follow on that note, for those who might be afraid or skeptical about possible future advancements, what would you tell them?
If you look at our history as a human race, it's always been so, right? So you're always afraid of something that's new. I think the only way to overcome that is dissemination of knowledge, right? And really understanding what it means, how I can use it. Is the use or the utility beneficial to me, beneficial to my family? All of these questions may seem non-technical or non-scientific, but ultimately we are doing this for the society's benefit, right? So I would encourage everyone to participate in this dialogue and this debate, and the more scientists like me are exposed to the questions that society poses, we are likely to take more logical and beneficial steps.
All right, thank you for your time, Dr. Nandabalan.
Thanks again.
Up next is Master of Science candidate in the Criminal Justice Department, graduate student Breakout Hairston. The title of her talk is Deterring Juvenile Crime with Cognitive Behavioral Therapy.
Hello everyone, my name is Breakout Hairston, and I want to first start by saying that I'm not a brain science expert, even though we'll be talking about brain science today. I study criminal justice at the University of New Haven, and I focus on juvenile crime and violent crime in juveniles. So before we get into the talk, I just want to go over a few definitions. The first one is recidivism, which is the concept behind someone who has committed a criminal act and received punishment for it, or has done time for their crime, yet reoffends in the future. While deterrence is the concept behind reducing juvenile crime or reducing criminal acts by introducing alternative methods rather than probation or parole. And one of those methods is cognitive behavioral therapy. This method can reduce criminal behavior and reduce recidivism, which in turn will reduce crime in the future. So I want to have you guys imagine an 8-year-old on a bus after school with a crowd of other kids. And then I want you to imagine 2 police officers standing behind this child. And I want to leave you with that image while we get into this talk. First, we need to understand that juvenile brains are not fully developed. So punishing them for decisions that they essentially did not fully understand is a cruel and unusual punishment. So restorative programs have determined that deterrence can be reached by using discipline and skill-building approaches as the most important program goals, because these efforts can be easier traced in research trials and sanctioned research spaces where the results are easier tracked and replicated. And to be replicable means that the findings of the research study are essentially able to be repeated in the outside world, and not just where you can trace the results in a controlled research environment. Now, Mark Lipsey from Vanderbilt University conducted his own analysis of 548 studies, starting in 1958 and continuing to 2002. He evaluated proponents of preventative methods and found that cognitive behavioral therapy programs and their policies were far more effective than any other intervention, such as probation, punitive methods, or community parole. And following that, another study was done starting in 1965 and ending in 2005, and those findings also agreed that cognitive behavioral therapy was effective even when juvenile offenders were already undergoing punitive sentences. So this means that cognitive behavioral therapy can be introduced at any time. Even though it is an early preventative method, it's not too late to introduce an alternative to a punitive method of punishment. The only way to answer whether or not cognitive behavioral therapy is effective on a larger scale is to introduce massive research studies where cognitive behavioral therapy is used at the onset of a juvenile offender's career. There are select government policies and programs who have already recognized this truth and funded programs such as aggression replacement therapy, which uses the cognitive behavioral therapy protocols to help juveniles understand how they make their decisions, how they use their thoughts and emotions to behave. Because essentially thoughts and behaviors and emotions all go hand in hand. And most importantly is what kind of offenders would this be effective with? Is it only petty crimes? Can this be effective for violent crimes that are of a concern to society? And the answer is that high-risk offenders actually serve as a prime example of how cognitive behavioral therapy can mold the juvenile brain while it's still developing and introduce alternatives to violence or indeterminate behavior that juveniles easier fall prey to. And one of the reasons that juveniles so easily engage in criminal behavior or petty crimes is because social crime theories have determined that things such as peer pressure greatly affect the decisions of children. Now, cognitive behavioral therapy can help them work through those emotions rather than internalizing them or easier falling prey to the thoughts of others and the behaviors of others. Now, the research studies and the trials, they can only take us so far. And the criminal justice system and the important decision makers and policy makers need to see these practices in use. They need to understand that the juvenile brain is not as developed as an adult brain. They need to understand that instead of punishing them for a crime done at one moment in time, they should instead be counseled and helped through their emotions and their thoughts, what they're going through, how to ensure that if they go through it again, will this same thing happen whether or not they're put in prison. So overhauling the current practices in place immediately is essentially not the way to go. But considering these cognitive behavioral therapy methods can lead us toward an easier, acceptable criminal justice system, because deterring juvenile crime is an ongoing process. It requires the right infrastructure and the right oversight and the right people making it work. So it won't always be the judge or the jury. Sometimes it has to start with the police officer called to the scene, or the school teacher who is reporting suspicious behavior at school, or even parents at home. And back to the aggression replacement therapy, that is one of the leading protocols because it is backed by the research trials that have delivered those replicable results. And one of them was seen in Graham versus Florida. Now, this case was about a 16-year-old boy who had shoplifted and was sentenced to juvenile detention. And while out on parole, he reoffended and was sentenced to life in prison. His case was appealed, and the state of Florida decided that to give a juvenile a life sentence for behaviors that he may not have understood or been fully developed enough to control is a cruel and unusual punishment. And that is something that needs to be seen more often. We need the people who are on the ground to understand that there are other ways, there are other methods to deterring crime, rather than engaging a juvenile whose brain is still developing in a very violent prison system, who can essentially mold their behavior in the future to become more violent, rather than preventing violence in the future. These preventative approaches to deterring juvenile crime will be the start of a reformed criminal justice system where punishment is not always the answer. Because we need to understand that the juvenile brain is very limited, and in those limitations is the key to how to deter crime by understanding how they commit crime, and it will reduce the inundation of adult offenders and the overcrowding of jails and prisons and the surplus of citizens on parole and probation whose lives were essentially halted after one decision changed everything for them. And there's another way to explain this, and it's called labeling. A short definition of that is when someone commits an act, in this case a crime, to say that because they did a bad thing, they are a bad person, or in turn, a criminal, is what labeling is. So labeling a child who committed a crime as a criminal decides how their future will develop. So lastly, I want to go back to that image of the 8-year-old and the 2 police officers that we started with. And those officers had a decision in that moment of what they could do after being called by a bus driver to the scene and being told that that 8-year-old had struck another kid on the bus. And having no idea of any backstory or why it happened, instead of the police officer going through a booking or taking her to the police station or something more punitive, the police officer decided to take her home to her parents. And while that's not cognitive behavioral therapy, it is an alternative method to intervening in crime committed by children. And it is a way to offer them an alternative to entering them into a system that will essentially change how they develop in the future. And if you hadn't figured it out already, that 8-year-old was me. And it was probably the start of my life in the criminal justice system, but luckily, because of that decision, I'm on the outside of it and not on the inside. So lastly, today's juvenile delinquents would be tomorrow's adult offenders if we don't intervene, if we don't offer them an alternative to understanding why they're doing what they're doing, helping them through their thoughts, through their emotions, and changing their behaviors. By doing that, by educating them and counseling them, we will improve the future of the American criminal justice system.
It is my honor to welcome our next speaker, Shagufta Rafi. She is a graduate student in our Department of Psychology at the University of New Haven with a concentration in industrial organizational psychology. The title of her talk today is How to Experience Positivity and Be Truly Happy in Life.
Everyone, good morning. My name is Shagufta Rafi and I'm a first-year industrial organizational psychology master's student at University of New Haven. And today I'd like to speak about positive psychology and how we can implement measures from positive psychology into our lives. To begin with, I'd like to say that there has been many occasions in our life where we've been asked this question to describe a moment where we thought we were the most happiest. And our answers are always something along the lines of when we went to a friend's birthday party or when we attended someone's graduation ceremony where we really enjoyed or liked to be a part of. The problem in asking for a moment is you're trying to limit their capacity to that particular context. But what happens to the emotion after the context? Are they still able to transfer that from one situation to another, or does it become completely non-existent? The answer to this lies in the science of positive psychology. What it essentially stands for is not the popular belief which people have about positive psychology that it's all just about being happy all the time. In fact, Mahai Csikszentmihalyi, who's a massively well-credentialed, well-respected pioneer in this area, has stated that in order for human beings to have a fulfilling experience, you cannot remove the bad part. It's almost impossible, and it's nonsensical to not to expect some failures. It is going to happen. It's a part and parcel of your life. So you're trying to think that you cannot achieve that, it's leading you to a path which is much more detrimental for you. So what positive psychology does is it guides you to be much more resilient, to deal with certain situations in our life which are considered not to be so fortunate. So now to begin with, let's talk about emotions. What do we think about emotions? We think about something that's related to mental processes or that's related to brain and nervous system, which is right for most of the part. But emotion, the word itself in Latin, stands for emotional energy. So what that essentially means is it's an energy which flows throughout your body. And as we all know, that energy is neither created nor destroyed. So it literally floats from one form to another. So when the energy is flowing in your body, it's completely neutral. It has absolutely no meaning attached to it. You human beings, depending on your sensation and your physiology, subscribe it whether or not it's supposed to be a positive emotion or negative emotion. Otherwise, it's completely neutral. Now, this framework was actually brought forward by Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, where she very eloquently explains how emotions actually flow in our body. And this is the one. So it starts with circumstances, which are basically your situations, which we go through on a daily basis, and then it moves to appraisal stage. So what appraisal stage means is the interpretation of those circumstances which we go through, where we attribute whether or not it's supposed to be positive or negative. And then comes the changes. So what this region does is emotions have the capacity to socially broadcast itself to the rest of the world. So for instance, if you're sad, you look upset and gloomy and you look very dull. But if you're happy, you're joyous, you smile more, you laugh more, so it's apparent, it's out there, it's very clear. And people can tell which emotion you're going through depending on the changes in your body state. And then comes the response. So according to her, you can change this process with 3 different ways. The first one is either by changing how you respond, your bodily function, so you can choose not to. And the second one is, which is extremely crucial and very important, is the one where you do the interpretation of your circumstances as to whether or not it's supposed to be a pleasant one or unpleasant one. And then if you can change the whole circumstances itself. Now, when we think about emotions, why do we always think about it being something negative, about negative emotion, something that's dark, something that probably shouldn't be experienced? Let me give you an example. So for instance, if you buy a new car versus you get into a car accident, your reactions to these 2 events are going to be entirely different than one another. And the reason is, the first one is going to be something pleasant where you're happy, and the other one, ideally, would be something negative. But have you ever thought, does the negative emotion, which is associated to car accident, does it actually add any value to our life? Absolutely not. It's not going to fundamentally change anything, or it's not going to have a significant impact onto my life. Even though the car accident took place, I cannot undo that. That's not, I'm not able to do anything about that. But still, I'm trying to attribute it with something negative and not positive. And the reason is because our brain is more likely to pick on negativity and rewire negative experiences in a much more quicker fashion than the positive experiences. The irony here is there is an asymmetry between positive experiences and negative experiences. So what that essentially means is when you wake up in the morning and if you practice gratitude, you will see that there are loads of experiences in your life which are much more pleasant, enjoyable, pleasurable, where you really like to be a part of. Whereas negative emotions are very rare, but still they scream, they're very loud, they're very out there, which is why our brain tries to pick on them. And when we think about negativity, the reason is why we think about it being something dark is when you experience positive emotions, there is a change in your brain chemistry where you're able to broaden your awareness, where you're able to see things much beyond than what you typically would. Whereas when you experience negative emotions, where you're gloomy and you're cynical of certain things in your life, you're not able to do that. Your vision becomes very clamped down, where you have a very streamlined view of what you're looking at. So for example, if you have to take a test, you wake up next day in the morning and you will completely forget about all the grateful things which are happening for you, and you'll just focus on the test. This is the idea. You always tend to focus on the negative aspects of your life, completely disregarding what's the good aspect of your life, which is very much part of you as a human being. And this theory was brought forward by Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, where she describes it as being a broaden and build theory. So what this means is you're trying to broaden your awareness in the moment by experiencing those positive emotions, and then you're building it over time. And by building, what that means is you're becoming much more resilient to that situation, so you're able to handle it in a much better manner than you would before. So when we think about broadening your awareness, this is not just a topic where we talk about things in the sense which is not tested. So many behavioral experiments try to test this area, and what they found was, one of the studies was done by Anderson in the year 2009. So what they did was they tried to divide the participants into two different categories. One of them was primed with positive emotions, and the other one was primed with neutral. And the group, both of them, were asked to view images of real estate as well as a photo which was in front of the real estate, and were asked to identify the gender. And what they found with brain imaging studies and eye tracking is, when individuals are primed with positive emotions, they are much more likely to look at both the real estate as well as the image, whereas individuals who are primed with just neutral emotions were looking at the photo. And how they know this is because the region of the brain which gets activated when you look at the place, and the region of the brain which gets activated when you look at the face, both of them were equally activated amongst individuals who are primed with positive emotions. As you guys can see in this picture, there's a real estate as well as the photo, and participants were primed with positive emotions were looking at both of them. Now, when we think about positive experiences, how you can gain this, how can you achieve this? It's out there in the world, it's very much apparent, and we know this. But the reason why we are not able to achieve that authentic happiness is because you are not being mindful. You are just being in the moment. You're just missing the ability for you to be present and experience things as they are. And the number one reason for this is social media. So the world of instant gratification, where you go to a place and the first thing you would do is you would like to take a picture of that and put it up on your social media, and you're trying to wait for the likes and the comments to actually experience that emotion. And you're depriving your body to go through that, depending on what's happening in outside world. And anything that's outside of you is completely, it's varying, and what's inside of you is constant. So you need to make your decisions based on what's inside rather than what's outside. And the second one is where you're trying to actually achieve the authentic happiness by trying to imitate someone else's path of success. So what brings them joy and happiness might not be the same for me. If I enjoy dance classes, it might not apply to every single person out there. And you need to identify and explore and discover and see as to what you really like and what's your passion, what's your calling. That's when you will be able to truly achieve the authentic happiness. And the third one is by practicing mindfulness-based exercises where you try to focus on your breath. So breath is the only thing which is connected to life. So if you're not breathing, then you die. So once you focus on your breath, that connects to your thoughts, and your thoughts in turn dictates your behavior. And that's how you move in the world today, where you practice mindfulness-based exercises where you're focusing on your breath, so you're mindful, you can take in those positive emotions, and then you can propel on the path of growth and success where you're being much more resilient and in the moment. And this is the message of positive psychology. Thank you so much.
Hi again. This will begin our second live Q&A with our speaker, Shagufta.
Thank you, Shagufta, for your talk. It was really refreshing and interesting. Now, a couple questions. How can those with mental health disorders benefit from mindfulness?
So there is a spectrum when it comes to mental health disorders, right? So you have like clinical depression, you have autism, you have schizophrenia, so there are many. So when it comes to autistic individuals, I think they can actually benefit when it comes to mindfulness-based exercises if they can do it in the right way. But the problem is, if you're not functionally capable of doing it the right way, then you will never be able to achieve that, because there's a process which you have to follow. So let's say, for instance, if you're clinically depressed, then mindfulness-based exercise will definitely help you, because you know how to perform yoga, you know how to do certain things, following the instructions and stuff like that. But let's say, for instance, if you are severely schizophrenic, then you will never be able to perform that, because following the instructions would be extremely challenging for you. So, yeah.
To follow that, how do you think positive or negative childhood experiences would prime the brain for adulthood?
All right. So, if you go through like loads of negative experiences from a very young age, then you will develop many defense mechanisms which might not be helpful for you when you actually grow up as an adult. So for instance, you will have a fear of abandonment, or you will have insecure attachment, and it will reflect in your interpersonal relationship that you will have with people. And so let's say, for instance, if someone who was raised with a secure attachment, then for them it will be entirely different. Their experience will be different than the one who who had like an insecure attachment, or many negative experiences like trauma, or any other kind which will be determined as something that's been negative.
Instagram, you may have known, considered removing like the likes/comments section on your posts. Would you support this, and how would like global mindfulness look if such a thing took place?
I think likes and comments section is fine as far as I'm concerned. It's okay as long as you don't rely 100% onto them, and you don't let that define your identity. You don't think that if you don't get a certain number of likes, then you're not capable of doing certain things. So as long as it's in your control, it's in your hand, and you are the one who decide, rather than you're letting the world, who is outside of you. That's exactly what I was saying in my talk even, that you shouldn't let other people, because outside entirety is variable, it's changing. So maybe today people might like your photo, tomorrow they might not like the exact same thing. But you will always remain constant. So if you have uploaded a certain photo, or you support a certain cause, you will always support that, regardless of anyone's opinion or whatever people think of that. So likes and comments are fine, and it really depends on where you draw boundaries for your own self.
Now, to wrap up our questions, it's been increasingly important to acknowledge diversity. So do cultural experiences increase an individual's sense of mindfulness or awareness?
If you're raised with a sense that like you were exposed to many different cultures, and you have a sense of diversity, but at the same time you have preconceived notions about certain cultures, or if you have traveled the rest of the world, but then you're really not aware of things that's happening around you, then you will never be able to experience mindfulness, even though you're there in the moment, you're experiencing it right in there, but you just do not know how to take in, because it takes exactly 10 to 20 seconds for your brain to rewire it as being a positive experience. So you can travel across the world, you can meet loads of people from different cultures, but if you do not have the capability of doing so, then you will never be able to experience mindfulness in its true essence. So, yeah.
Well, thank you.
All right, thank you for tuning in. Right now we're going to do some online breakout sessions just so you all online can meet each other and get to know each other a little bit. There will be a member from the UNH TED Talk group and from the executive board who will be facilitating this 15-minute discussion, so don't go anywhere, and hope you enjoy the breakout session.
All right, moving on to the second half of our event, we have Elizabeth O'Donnell, our undergraduate TEDx speaker. She is pursuing a BS in nutrition and dietetics. Her talk will be about the effects of nutrition on America's obesity crisis.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth O'Donnell. I'm currently a junior studying nutrition and dietetics at the University of New Haven. The topic of my talk today is personal to me. I have been surrounded by nutrition for almost my entire life. I love to cook and have been doing so since I was a toddler. I am also an athlete and I have played many sports growing up. The topic of my talk might not be as personal to the entire public population, but should be an eye-opener to the current situation in the United States. Many reasons why obesity is such a problem is displayed in our food. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in America, in 2017 and 2018, the amount of American adults that were obese surpassed 40%. In 2017 and 2018, 42.4% of American adults were obese. Healthcare in this country is expensive. However, with proper nutrition and healthy lifestyle choices, high medical bills can be prevented. Dietitians can prevent and solve many of the problems that obesity has. They could prevent illness and morbidity. Doctors receive a lot of education on how to cure and treat illness. However, more education is needed on prevention instead of curing. Obesity can affect physical health, obviously, but it could also affect mental health. Someone's moods, emotions, behaviors, and thoughts can be altered severely by obesity. We have the answers to solve the problem of obesity, yet they're not so easy to apply. If they were, obesity would not be such a problem. Many Americans are misinformed about health or lack the proper knowledge of nutrition. Every individual is different. If we are all the same, we would all be following the same diet. We would all be eating the same foods. However, some eating habits that work for some might not work for the other. This is why there are so many different diet trends. If we all follow the same diet, this would all be successful for us, but we are all different. It is also hard to decrease the amount of foods that taste good but are not good for us in America. Unhealthy eating is also advertised more and more accessible than healthy eating. Fast food companies have drive-thrus. It is very hard to find farm stands that have drive-thrus. Picking up food and reheating it that is already pre-made and buying food from restaurants is easier than buying fresh ingredients and making a meal yourself. We also see more commercials and advertisements for unhealthy eating than healthy eating. We see a lot of commercials for sugary foods and fast food companies. It's harder to find healthy food commercials. Food also exists everywhere. We eat when we are happy, we eat when we are sad, we eat at parties, we eat at events, gatherings, get-togethers, and other social events. Food is what is keeping us alive. We cannot survive without it. Yet many people die each year from the foods they eat. Food is very powerful. Laws need to be made to change the ingredients that go into food. There are many unnatural ingredients, GMOs, and processed ingredients. Over time, food companies have incorporated these into their products. Obesity in America has not always been this apparent. Over time, food companies have incorporated more unnatural ingredients. Obesity in other countries is also not as apparent because they simply do not have the same tools, resources, and processed ingredients that America has. With the growing population, sustainability is very important. This method can help prevent food waste, better the earth, and provide a better environment for ourselves. It is not as hard as you think to live a sustainable life. Not only will sustainability help better our environment and our earth, but it will provide better health for us in the future. Easy ways that many people can live a sustainable life include using a refillable water bottle instead of buying plastic water bottles from the store each time, eating seasonally, eating more plant-based foods like nuts, legumes, fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, and buying from farmers markets. A lot of foods being sold to supermarkets in America is processed and contains unnatural ingredients. These foods are also high in calories, sugar, sodium, and saturated fat. I will never forget a couple years ago going to the grocery store with two of my friends. We were looking at the sugary cereals, and I pointed out how much sugar was in one of them. My friend said, "Oh, I didn't realize there was so much sugar in the cereal," and that she said she only looks for calories. This is why food labels need to be changed, because many do not understand them or do not know how to properly read them. We also need to change the serving size on food products as well. Many people do not eat the serving size that is on food products. Food products could also be misleading. A food product could be labeled low in saturated fat. However, this food could also be high in sugar. If you take fat out of a food such as cookies, cake, brownies, or ice cream, it will no longer taste good. So food companies feel the need to add more sugar so it will still taste good. So now this product is low in saturated fat, but it is, however, high in sugar. Many factors from food companies can also help this crisis as well. Companies can change out their ingredients for healthier alternatives that still taste appealing. They do not need as much unnatural ingredients and ingredients that many people cannot pronounce or know what they are. Many probably do not know that the ingredients also starts out by listing the most abundant ingredients first. So, if a food product lists sugar first, it is highest in sugar and of any other ingredient. Organic products are more expensive, and not everyone can afford the best nutrition for themselves and their families. Poverty is a major factor for the obesity rates in America. Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, also known as SNAP, is helping with this problem. SNAP helps more than 44 million Americans each year, which is about 14% of the total American population. Not only is SNAP helping with people who are financially unstable, but they're giving more Americans who do not have the funds to buy healthy meals a healthy meal. More education on nutrition and healthy lifestyles should be provided to children starting at a young age so they could jump on healthy habits as soon as possible. Children, to get a better education, need to have fresh meals in their diet. Many of the cafeterias across the United States have lunches that are just heated up in the microwave instead of freshly made to order. One organization that is helping with this problem and taking these matters into consideration is Salad Bars to Schools. Salad Bars to Schools' goal is to provide more salad bars in cafeterias and provide more education to students on healthy eating and healthy lifestyles and nutrition and wellness. Restaurants also play a large factor in the obesity rates in America today. Restaurants that have a lot of chains locations are already required to list out their nutritional facts to their customers. However, this should be apparent for all restaurants across the entire United States, for every restaurant to list out their nutrition facts to customers. This might cause restaurants to change their ingredients of their products so it could be more health conscious and be more appealing to their customers. However, this might not work because many fast food restaurants and restaurants in general already list out their very unnutritious food products with nutrition facts that are not healthy, and they have no shame in doing it. If we do not change the obesity problem we have today in America, this will be our future. A lot of the changes we can receive to help the problem comes from the government. However, in the past couple of years, even decades, little to no help or change has been made from the government. Education and change are probably the two most important factors in making obesity rates decline. Small impacts that we make today and small changes that we make today will impact our future greatly and have a large impact on our future. If we start changing the foods we eat and looking towards dietitians and changing how we educate doctors and how we can prevent instead of cure obesity, we will no longer have as high as an obesity rate. So, providing better health practices today and implementing better health laws today as well will provide for a healthier tomorrow, as well as healthier children and healthier adults. This can be helped. This is predicted our future, but it doesn't have to be our future.
All right, thank you, Liz, for that talk about obesity. Now, a couple questions. How would you modify food labels to make them consumer friendly?
So I'd make them easier to read, like make the font bigger, or just make it so it's suitable for all ages, and that it doesn't take a microscope to look at, or it doesn't take like a lot of nutrition knowledge to look at. And I would also change like the serving size, because sometimes the serving size is like half like a bag of chips or something. It might be kind of confusing if you think you're just going to eat the whole bag of chips when the serving size is only half the bag. And just change like the measurements maybe to make it more understandable.
With that, how can advertisements play a role in decreasing the United States obesity rate?
So, fast food commercials and commercials for unhealthy foods, they make their commercials seem as if this is the best product ever, and you'll be super happy if you eat the food, which might be true, but it doesn't show the negative side of eating these unhealthy foods. And not to like make really morbid advertisements, but some advertisements and commercials we already have show the really bad effects of smoking and how it could kill you. If we had that for unhealthy foods too, it might cause a decrease in the obesity rate.
Now, what is the best way, in your opinion, to educate adolescents on eating healthy?
Just make it seem really appealing for them. Like, eating healthy can be easy and fun. So just, it could be easy to incorporate in their everyday lives. So just make it something that they would want to do. And I think that would help a lot of adolescents want to eat a healthier lifestyle.
So in your talk, you mentioned SNAP benefits. Besides SNAP benefits, what would you tell those who claim fresh produce is too expensive or doesn't work for their budget?
I would tell them that you could go for like the cheaper products, the cheaper produce. You don't have to buy the most high-end version of the fresh produce, and you don't have to splurge every time on the groceries when you go shopping. You can make your meals stretch by buying in bulk instead of just buying one at a time.
All right, thank you, Liz.
Thanks again.
Okay, so our next TEDx speaker is Dr. Dani. She is pursuing a Master's of Public Health, and the talk of her title is Talk, Share, and Aware, Learning How to Discuss Sex Education Openly.
Hi guys, thank you for coming to my TEDx presentation. I'm Dr. Dhani, #NewTownGirl. Before moving forward, I would like to discuss some information about myself, my experiences, and the scenarios that are present in India. I completed my graduation and post-graduation in the field of homeopathic medicine and surgery with 2 years of experience as a medical doctor, as a student coordinator, as a social worker, and a volunteer doctor. I came here to pursue my master's degree in public health from University of New Haven. Well, my journey as a student started in 2007 and it was completed in 2017. The long 10 years of my journey, I experienced, I learned, and I grew as a student. Because I still remember when I was in my final year of undergraduation, I went to different peripheral OPDs to conduct free health checking camps to educate people about the vitality of good health, how to maintain a personal hygiene, and most importantly, how to prevent any outbreak of diseases in the community. That was a time when I started liking preventive and social medicine as a subject, which eventually helped me to get engaged with different kind of non-government organization working for cancer in females and including breast cancer and cervix cancer. I applied in WHO, UNICEF and Doctors Without Borders at that time. Unfortunately, I did not make it, but as of now, I'm doing my master's degree from University of New Haven. I'm looking forward to get a chance to work with them and able to provide my services to the community very soon. When it comes to the scenarios, you will just have to Google it out and you will find a long list of issues that are prevalent in India. But I really want to talk about the things which I am interested in. That is non-availability of sex education among the youth and the adolescent. India is growing at a very fast pace and you will see Indians working everywhere, whether it's medicine, engineering, IT, politics. Kamala Harris is one of the biggest example and I simply adore her. Priyanka Chopra. If you can see a long list of eminent and affluent people, still India is not considered as a developed nation. You know why? This is not just only the one factor, or this is not the only thing which is causing India is not getting developed. Because you know, in India, sex education is not included in the curriculum, and when you Google it out and you will see the statistics, the crime against women, minor children and rape and all related to these offenses, you will find a similar pattern, that non-availability or unawareness about the healthy sexual habits. Sex education is not just about having a good time or menstrual hygiene. It is far beyond that and you have to learn it. And I'm happy that Government of India is working on it and they have started a sex education in their curriculum. But yeah, it is just restricted to an urban area and I'm looking forward so that it gets spread to the entire nation. Now the dream of coming to the United States came true 2 months back. I came here 2 months back and since then I've been reading about the public health and I have a habit of reading statistics and different journals over the internet. You know, then I found here the sex education is included in the curriculum, which is a commendable thing, which shows that public health programs and school health programs are continuously doing their right job. But here comes an eye-opener. Teen pregnancy, rape, and what did you say? Date violence, date rape. These two terms I came to know about this here only, not in India. So why these all things are happening? Then I started Googling out. Then I found different websites. From there onwards, I found that every 73 seconds, one American get assaulted. And after reading more, then I found about the disparities. I got to know about the disparity through my subject and how it is important and what is the importance of disparities among the population. Then I found the girls, young girls are more prone to get raped or sexually assaulted compared to boys. I'm not saying boys are very safe, even boys are also not safe. 1 in 33 boys get assaulted or raped by their known ones or strangers. If we talk about the disparity among the females, according to the age, you will see young girls are more prone to get raped or sexually assaulted or faces such kind of situations. You know, 50% of females get assaulted or get raped by their partners, and 40% of females get raped or assaulted by their known ones. See the difference, you can see. And what about the boys? Boys are also not very safe over here. More than 50% of boys get raped by their known ones and 20% of boys get raped by the strangers. As I am a university student, I have to understand the scenario which are prevalent in university. So when I started reading, I got to know 13% of total entire university students experience such kind of situation in their entire life? And what about the disparity among the degrees, post-graduation and undergraduation? The postgraduate students, around 6.9% of females and 2.4% of males respectively experience such kind of situation in the university. And what about the undergrads? You will be shocked to know that 24.6% of females and 9.7% of males experience such kind of situation when they are in their university area. So, and one more thing, you know, stalking is also a very offensive crime, you know. 5.8% of female experiences stalking before they enter the university. See, all these things are happening in United States of America, which is called as a developed nation. Now let's talk about the causes. You know, as a medical student, we always say that idiopathy, which means cause not known. Here also the understanding the cause is very difficult, but there are few things which can lead to these kinds of offenses or crimes in the society. One is anger and rage. Second is demonizing other gender. Third, not understanding or the psychological effects are there. So if we talk about the individual effects or individual cause, I would say unavailability of sex education among the population and the unawareness about the sexual consent. We have to understand this particularly because if we are in a relationship, the other partner should know about the sex offenses, and if the person is not ready to proceed, how can you move forward with that? It eventually leads to misconduct. So if we are in a, how can we control this? How can we combat this situation? First of all, we have to be more aware. We have to be more vigilant when you are entering to the university. I know you are kids and you have just completed your school, but you have to be more vigilant. Talk to your parents regarding this. And if you are talking to your parents, talk about what kind of situation you are facing. Later on, just enter your university and just see where you can go and talk related to your situation. There are plenty of, you can find police in the university. These are the situations which you can handle it very easily. And I think University of New Haven is doing it because I still remember when I entered the university, I got a long survey, 1.5 hour survey about this. And this shows that university is continuously doing this work so that they can make the university campus more protected for their students. And lastly, to conclude, I would like to thank everybody and specifically the resources which I've used from the internet, my university for providing me and accepting my application so that I came here to study, and TEDx for giving me the opportunity to talk about my situation and the topic which I really want to talk about, and my professors for teaching me about the public health, and lastly, all the audience for bearing me with my interrupted English and my mistakes and my nervousness. And lastly, all these statistics are just a tip of iceberg. The summer portion is very deep and you have to understand it by digging it inside. And lastly, just talk about your problems to whom you want to talk. Share your problems. And lastly, be aware and just speak, don't sit quiet. And thank you so much and have a good day.
Thank you for your very informative talk. So our first question we'd like to start with is, in your professional opinion, what ways can colleges better address sexual education?
When it comes to addressing these problems, I think every university is doing their job, and I think they are doing very good job. But first of all, it is very important to educate student about what is sex education is. It is not just about understanding menstrual hygiene or development of secondary sexual character or spending good time. It is more than that. It is more deeper than that. And I think through different programs, like university can organize different programs and by employing like trained teachers who can address these problems to the students. And yeah.
Now, what is an appropriate way to discuss sex education with children, it being a difficult topic?
Sorry, come again?
Sorry, to repeat. What is an appropriate way to discuss sexual education with children because it's a difficult topic?
Yeah, I think it is very difficult to educate children specifically, but we have to know what they like through brochures, through flyers, and through advertisement, because they are more attractive, and the students are more engaged and children are more engaged to see things on television. So we can use advertisement and television in a better way to educate them.
So following that, in your talk, you mentioned sexual assault. So what are some prolonged consequences related to sexual assault that we can better address or prevent in the United States?
Yeah, after reading the statistics, I got to know different consequences related to sex education or non-availability of sex education or sexual assault. So I found more than physical trauma or more than physical impact, the psychological impacts are more powerful, and it is very important to address these situations through different organizations and through free helplines. And I think I would like to name one of the organization that I'm following right now is RAIN. They are providing helplines to those who are survivors, the sexual assault survivors, and they are doing the pretty job.
Now, since consent is quite a complicated topic, how do we properly teach this to people, and specifically adolescents?
First of all, it is the duty of parents to educate their children about sexual consent, because they are more close to them. So I think sexual consent, this topic I came to know after coming to United States. So I think parents, it's a duty of parents and professors to educate their students and children about the sexual consent. And it is very important so that we can make good, healthy, and sexual habits in the future.
Thank you so much for your responses. That is all for your talk. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
The last TEDx speaker we have for today's event is Shamer Holmes. She is one of our graduate student speakers. She serves as the Assistant Youth Director and Community Liaison. The title of her talk is The Real TikTok Challenge: Conversations to Have with Your Child Before the Internet Does.
Had to stand off, in a minute spot, knock your dreads off, my what is call me about it.
And that, my friends, was my rendition of the Junebug Challenge. The Junebug Challenge became popular when it was uploaded on TikTok on December the 23rd, 2020. The Junebug Challenge has blew up since then, being across all platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It's important to me because my students were the ones who introduced me into the Junebug Challenge. I work as an assistant youth director and community liaison to a few youth organizations throughout Connecticut, and it's inevitable for me not to do a Chick-Chack challenge because my students do them. So I started realizing that through TikTok, they were exposed to so many different things, even outside of just cute dances or hilarious voiceovers. Our kids are at risk when they're being exposed to predators, to cyberbullies, and also to trolls. So I thought it was very important for me to use this platform to talk to my students' parents, to talk to caretakers, and to talk to educators about the conversations they should have before allowing their children to use social media. So just a little bit of more information about TikTok. TikTok came on the scene in September of 2016. It was introduced to China primarily. As of January 2021,
TikTok has 689 million active users monthly. The ages between 10 and 29 are the active users who normally populate TikTok. It's available in 155 countries, and it's very, very easy to share and create content, which is why the youth really love this platform in particular. It's very important that we take a step back and realize that talking to our children about social media and what TikTok introduces them to is very important because it's deeper than just say no to strangers. It's deeper than just staying out of inboxes. It's deeper than just keeping conversations private. Don't share your information, a lot of my students say, their parents say. Don't talk to strangers, again, something my parents tell my students. But we have to take a step back and delve deeper into conversations with our kids so that they understand that they are at risk. Yes, they want to have fun, but there's a world, a dark world outside of social media that we really have to prepare our students for. When you think about it, there was a time where we didn't have smartphones, but when smartphones were introduced roughly 2007, we found that an increase of bullying and suicide rates increased drastically. Between the years of 2007 and 2018, we saw a dramatic increase in pediatric suicide by 54.7%. We also found that girls who started using social media more than 2 and 3 hours a day were most impacted by the negative impacts of social media. So we really want to highlight the negative impacts of social media. Even though the students want to have fun, there are certain conversations we have to avoid depression, to avoid an influx in suicide rates, and also to decrease how students feel about themselves in a negative way. So here are just a few conversation starters that I really think would help parents, guardians, and caretakers start the conversation about social media and how to keep our kids safe. First and foremost, everyone who friends you isn't really your friend. We know that as adults, we've come across people who really did not have our best interests at heart. So it's vital that we remind our children that not everyone who requests you on social media or likes your picture or follows you on a certain social media platform, they're not always going to be for you, and that's okay. But you're going to give them the tools to steer clear of people who are not in the best interest of them. Another conversation that I really think we should be having with our youth is who you follow says a lot about you. I have a mentor who always used to tell me, show me who you walk with and I'll show you who you are. Your friends are influencers, and it's important that you surround yourself with people who are going to bring you in a positive path, with people who truly love you and respect who you are and want the best for you. Another important conversation to have is trending is temporary, but the cloud is forever. And while doing research, I found that actually the cloud holds information up until 30 years without it being compromised. So it's important that we know, even though we find that it's 30 years, it's still going to be somewhere that'll be accessible to people to access. So our kids, they don't understand that posting things and saying certain things right now can infect them in the future. So let's make sure that we're holding on to the fact that we have to be cognizant of the conversations we host now so that moving forward, it won't negatively impact them. Another important conversation to have is what you say can and will be used against you. Again, it ties into what you post now can be unearthed and used to negatively impact whatever you have going on in the future. We think because we say it in the moment that it's just forgotten about, but tweets can be found, Facebook posts can be found, and I really think that this is something that our parents should instill within our kids, that what you say now can definitely be brought up in the future. Another conversation, filters falsify reality. Now, we all love a good filter. I know I'm guilty of using filters as well. It highlights and enhances. It gives you a certain oomph in your picture. But it's vital that we really take that concept and get deeper when it comes to our girls and boys. We live in a world where everything and everybody seems to be perfect. Full lips, no acne, all just hips. And it's important that we understand that those things, people work hard to get. Sometimes it's natural, and we want to stress to that. We want to stress that to our youth. Sometimes it is natural. Sometimes you can have clear skin. You can have a shapely body. You can wake up with a perfect smile. But sometimes it takes work. It takes dedication. It takes exercise. And it takes a couple bills, too, for surgeries and to things to help enhance the beauty that we see on screens. So it's important, again, that we tell our youth filters, although they're necessary, although they're fun and quirky and cute, and they help highlight some of your features and they give you a glow, we have to realize that it's not truth. It's not real, and it's okay. It's okay to be natural. It's okay to use the natural light. Another conversation is sharing is caring, but oversharing will definitely compromise your safety. We spoke a little bit about the predators, the trolls, and just the bullies on social media. They are real. They are out here. And any piece of information that they can use to get close to our kids, we have to make it so they realize certain things can't be shared, certain things can't be said. We're down to our last two, and they're probably the most important. Not everyone deserves your heart. Not everyone deserves your heart. On Instagram, you heart a picture. You don't like it. You really like this picture if you're going to love it on Instagram. But at the same time, what message is that giving off to the person's account that you're loving at that moment? Everyone doesn't deserve your attention. Everyone doesn't deserve your support. And I think it's vital that children, especially preteens and teens, know that not everyone deserves their love and affection and attention and their support. So it's vital that we instill in them, you have to be careful of who you follow, but also the content that you're liking, the patterns that you're creating, the trends that you're seeing. And last but not least, you can be your own influencer. We have so many young boys and girls who look to social media for people that they look up to, or for people that they want to dress like, for people who want to follow their career paths. But it's important that they understand that you're uniquely made. You can influence yourself and a plethora of other students around you. It's okay to be unique. It's okay not to follow the trends. And it's okay to be you. Love yourself before you go onto these platforms. It's vital that the parents instill that in them. Self-love is really going to be the ultimate factor that keeps our boys and girls safe, that keeps our boys and girls able to use these platforms, but in a way that they feel confident and that they are aware of all the things that are up against them. So again, TikTok, although it's fun, although it's easy to use, we still have to protect our kids. And by doing so, we need to have these uncomfortable conversations. Again, these conversations can be tough. However, it is vital that they are had in the most transparent way possible. Be honest, be real, and be patient with your child who's about to explore this huge world of social media. It's fun. Again, we know. I love the June bug. It took me a long time to learn it, even though it's simple to many. But it's important that we know the deeper issue besides the June bug. We have to protect our kids. We have to have the hard conversations. And although they want to be exposed to social media, although I love the June bug, I know that it's deeper than just one challenge. They're exposed to a world of predators, of trolls, of bullies, and we have to make sure that we equip them so that when they're using the platform, that they're safe, they're confident, and that they are ultimately having fun risk-free. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamer, for your talk on social media. We have a couple of questions for you. One, do you think social media impacts genders differently, and if so, why?
Absolutely. We found that the social media impacts girls the most because they are the ones who focus on the outward appearance the most. And it's really hard when you're a girl and you're seeing perfect bodies and you're 12 and 13 and you want that. So genders, they are impacted differently on social media. I personally think that girls are impacted negatively the most. Not saying that boys don't have issues, but we all know that sometimes girls can be really vain. And as a girl myself, I do understand that there's a certain look that society wants to place on you. And it's a lot that we're up against as girls. And I do encourage the boys as well to stay true to themselves. It's not all about being masculine or having the most money or being athletic. Be you. And that's what I'm trying to encourage with conversations such as these.
Now, being a youth director, what do you think is an appropriate age for a child to engage on social media platforms like TikTok?
That's really difficult because you want your kids to feel like they are included in what's going on. You want them to be down with the trends, but in my honest opinion, and again, based off of doing the work in the community for quite some time, I think middle school may be the safest bet because you don't want to encourage that in elementary school because you're still that much influence. You can be that much influence. But I think in middle school, you kind of have a grasp on who you may be come time high school. And you also have some insight on what's to expect by the time you reach high school. So I think middle school is safe, but under supervision, of course, and making sure that your child understands what comes along with social media. 6th, 7th, 8th grade might be the safest bet.
Will future generations be altered by perceived social media narratives, and if so, how?
I do believe so. I do think that what we post, what we're exposed to, what we say, what we do can ultimately, hurt us in the future. And it can also be a positive impact on the future as well. But we have to, and I can't stress it enough. I know kids are young and I know they're, still learning and growing, but we have a lot to look forward to, and we don't want something that we said 2, 4, 10 years ago to really hurt where we're going in the future. So it does, and it will impact us, and I think that we have a huge task in this generation, starting with the millennials and the new generation. We have to really watch what we say. Everything's being recorded, everything is televised, everything is posted, so it's accountability. You have to say what you say, but you have to stick by it, stand by it, so absolutely.
Now, to wrap up, we kind of have a deeper question. Do you think social media apps should be obligated to disclose information in legal matters such as cyberbullying?
Absolutely, especially if the child is under 18. I strongly believe that if something is happening to negatively impact the child, if they're being bullied, if they're being harmed in any kind of way, yes, make it public, and parents should be notified, and information should be made readily available. It should be made simple to access, and it should be helping solve some of these issues that our kids face today. I think if this information was made available swiftly, that we could reduce the suicide, the amount of depression, and all the things that our kids face. So absolutely, make this information available, make it free, and make it accessible.
Thanks, Shamir.
Thank you.
Now on to our final and our second networking session. Please take this time again to once again connect with one another, start those conversations, make those connections, and expand your network. Also, I want to bring your attention to the attendees tab on the top of your page where you'd be able to schedule internal meetings with one another and check each other's social medias to connect with each other after the event. All right, so now we will all be broken up into breakout rooms. As a special closing treat, our TEDx speaker Shagufta is going to lead a 10-minute mindfulness exercise so that we can reflect on all the important things that we've learned today and leave in a relaxed mindset so that we can tackle on the rest of our days. This is not mandatory, but you are more than welcome to join.
Good morning, everyone. So today we will be practicing mindfulness-based exercise, and I would request all of you to please sit down. First, find a quiet place where you are unlikely to be interrupted. If you're in a chair, scoot back in your seat so that the lowest part of your spine is well supported. If you like, you can close your eyes at this point. Lean forward from the back of the chair just a bit. Relax your shoulders and pull them back slightly. This position allows you to expand your ribcage in all directions when you breathe, creating more spaciousness around your heart. Place your feet flat on the floor so that the heels and balls of your feet make equal connection with the ground. Rest your palms gently on your thighs. If sitting like this does not appeal you, find another position that makes you feel both alert and relaxed. In these guided meditations, you'll focus on particular phrases. You'll hear my voice followed by periods of silence. After I introduce the phrases, gently repeat them silently in your mind during those periods of silence. Bring your awareness to the sensations of your own heart. Breathe to and from your heart. Notice how each breath brings new energy to your heart and allows your heart to send life, giving oxygen coursing throughout your body. Simply rest in this awareness for a few breaths. Now, in this quiet moment, visualize someone for whom you already feel warm, tender, and compassionate feelings. This could be a child, your spouse, or even a pet. Let his or her smiling face surface in your mind's eye. As you take in the image with the lightest mental touch, call to mind this loved one's good qualities. Your goal is to rouse warm and tender feelings naturally by visualizing how connecting with this loved one makes you feel. Let these tender feelings take root, creating genuine, warmth, and kindness in you. Now offer the 4 wishes of loving kindness to this person. May you feel safe. May you feel happy. May you feel healthy. May you live with ease. I'll repeat these phrases once more, followed by silence. When you no longer hear my voice, continue to offer these wishes gently and silently to the person you hold in mind. May you feel safe. May you feel happy. May you feel healthy. May you live with ease. You can rephrase the statements in ways that serve to stir your heart the most. You might also try extending the phrases although your mind might pull you to race ahead. Reflect on these phrases slowly at your heart's pace. Gently say one phrase to yourself with each breath cycle. In the space between phrases, pause for just a moment to feel your heart and body. Really notice them. Discover what sensations, if any, arise in you. With each phrase, you might imagine seeing your good wishes radiate from your heart to your loved one, perhaps as a beam of light or a slowly unfurling golden ribbon. Now radiate those warm and friendly feelings to someone else, perhaps to a friend. Visualize this person's face and lightly call to mind his or her good qualities. With this new person in mind, slowly repeat the phrases of loving kindness, pausing briefly between phrases to notice your heart sensations. May you feel safe. May you feel happy. May you feel healthy. May you live with ease. gradually call to mind all your friends and family as a group. Wish them all well through your body's appreciation of the classic phrases of loving kindness. May you all feel safe. May you all feel happy. May you all feel healthy. May you all live with ease. Now, welcome in all the people with whom you share a connection, even remote connections. Use the phrases to extend your goodwill as far as you can. May you all feel safe. May you all feel happy. May you all feel healthy. May you all live with ease. As you conclude this practice, gently remind yourself that you can generate these feelings of kindness and warmth anytime you wish. By taking this time, you condition your heart to more readily just do that. You're now better prepared to experience true connection with others. You can now open your eyes. Thank you so much.
And that concludes the first TEDxUNewHaven event. We are honored to present a diverse array of topics today, covering public health, psychology, criminal justice, and STEM. We hope that you enjoyed our TEDx talks and that it inspired you to think big, with hope for the future and to start conversations to build a better tomorrow. Thank you so much to all of our attendees this morning, to our sponsors, and we hope to see you again in our next year's event. Thank you.